Hello there guys, and in this tutorial I wanted to talk about a whole bunch of stuff related to hardware devices, and by hardware I mean device files and basically your operating system's representation of your devices. And by your operating system I obviously mean the Penguin operating system, which we were talking about so far and which we will continue to talk about, which is Linux. Okay, so I just decided to throw a whole bunch of stuff in this video. Feel free to watch this video, for example, when you're eating dinner. So you're kind of looking at your plate for a couple of seconds, then you look up, you kind of see what I'm doing. Then you look at the plate, just to see what you're eating. Then you look up. So basically what I'm trying to say is this video is just going to be a whole bunch of stuff. It's not really going to be anything that important, but I do believe that you should hear about these things at least once, so that if you ever encounter them, that you kind of understand what they are and how do they fit into the picture of Linux. Okay? So first off, I want to talk about partitioning disk devices, okay? And I just want to say that you can partition and repartition your permanent storage devices from the command line. I never did it, but you can use Google if you need more information. Then I want to talk about the two commands, which I pretty much never used, but they exist. And those are the df command, which tells you how much free space you have on your disk drive, and the free command, which displays the amount of free memory. Okay, and somebody's calling me on the phone again. I think this is like the third time someone's calling me, but I'm going to answer that later because I'm in the middle of the tutorial. Okay, so yeah, those two commands, I never really use them that much, but feel free to check them out later. Then I'm going to use my board right here, and I'm going to talk about something which is called sysfs. Okay, so sysfs, sysfs. Now, sysfs, if we were to pronounce it more correctly, provides a uniform view for attached devices based on their actual hardware attributes. And you can actually go to sys devices and press enter, and you can see all of the devices here. Okay, it differs from the dev directory because dev is designed for interacting with devices, while sysfs is designed to view device information and manage the device. Okay, then I wanted to talk about lsof. So the lsof command lists open files and the processes using them. By files, I mean both regular files and files that represent other non-files, such as network resources. So if I press enter, it will actually list all of the files and the processes using them. Okay, and you can look up lsof output if you wish on Google to really kind of gain understanding of all of these columns. Okay, then I wanted to talk about Udev. So what is Udev? And now I'll have to use my drawing board again. So Udev, if you ever hear that term, it's spelled like this, is a device manager for the Linux kernel. Udev manages devices, device files, or more accurate, or synonym for device files is device nodes, in the dev directory, and also handles all user space events raised when hardware devices are added or removed from the system. And let me clarify some terms here. So as we already know from the beginning of this series, user space is the space of the user, which is different from the kernel space, which only the kernel can access. And you can think of events, because I said that Udev handles all user space events. You can think of events as messages that are sent when certain actions happen on the system, when certain things happen on the system. Okay, then we have the term which is called UUID, and UUID is short for Universal Unique Identifier, is a type of serial number used to identify file systems. Okay, Then I will talk about displaying a list of mounted file systems. So if you want to display a list of all the file systems that are mounted, just type in the mount command without any arguments. You press enter, and now you can see which file systems are mounted on your system. Okay, and the format of the listing is device on mount point, and then you have the type, and then you have the file system type, and then you have the options. Okay, so for example, this is an example of my hard drive. So we have device on mount point, so it's mounted on root. Then I have the type is ext4, so that's the file system type, and then I have the options, which were used when mounting the device. Okay. Again, if you need clarification of any of those things, I'm just kind of glazing over them. Do feel free to use Google. And honestly, if you're a regular desktop user, unless you're truly curious, you don't really need to understand these things. But I think that if you are going to be a system administrator, I do think it's a good idea for you to understand these options and exactly what means what. But if you're a software developer, you can also just kind of graze over these, just watch this video, and if you ever need it, you can use Google. At least that's how I would approach that, okay? Then I just want to talk about repairing file systems. So in order to repair a file system, you will most likely use a program called FSCK. Okay, so FSCK stands for File System Check. Okay, and if you encounter FSCK, that's an indication of a really bad problem. And basically, FSCK is used very often with the word which you get if you exchange one letter in the FSCK, because if you encounter that, you are actually dealing with a very bad error. Okay. Then you also have a file which is called etc fstab. So basically, if I cat etc fstab and press enter, so the file itself actually lists the devices to be mounted at the time the computer starts. Okay, also known as boot time. So the time when the computer starts is also known as boot time, but this particular file contains the list of devices to be mounted at the time my computer starts. So basically, you can see a whole bunch of content here, and these lines which start with hashtags, they're just comments. You don't have to focus on those, but these without the comments, they actually specify what I want mounted in my boot time. Okay, and the first column is the device. The first column of this file is the device, which is identified by UUID, and we just talk about what that is. The second column is the mount point. The third is the file system type, okay, which is right here. The fourth is the options, which is right here. The fifth specifies if and when a file system is to be backed up with the dump command, which is right here, right, this 0 here. And the last option, which is the sixth column, is the order in which file systems should be checked with the FSCK command, which stands for file system check. Okay, so if this is 0, that means that this was going to be checked first, and then this is going to be checked second, because 0 is actually has greater priority than 1. Okay, so if we look at the numbers, they go 0, 1, 2, 3. So this is going to be checked first, then this is going to be checked second. Okay. And then I also wanted to talk about the md5 sum command. Okay, and in order to do that, I'm going to change. I apologize. I'm going to change to my Linux folder. Okay, to show you what the md5 sum command does. So let me just change to my Linux folder and let me run md5 sum, and let me write md5 sum on 1264 new.txt. And actually I got this thing right here, which is the md5 sum of my file. Now, what is the md5 sum? MD5 sum is a hash function, and hash functions are relevant because for different inputs, they produce different outputs. Even a slight difference in the input will produce massively different output. You can, for example, use the MD5 sum command to verify that your file is the same file you downloaded over a website. So for example, if I downloaded this file over a website, I could run the MD5 sum command, and then I could check if this MD5 sum equals to the MD5 sum provided on the website which hosted the file. Because again, if even a little bit of the input in this file is changed, this is going to be radically different, okay? So in order for you to check what is called file integrity, and what that means is that the file you downloaded is really the file which is on the website. Usually most websites, at least in the Linux ecosystem, contain the MD5 sum, okay? So then you can run this command and check if this matches the MD5 sum found on the website. And if it is the case, then you can be sure you are dealing with the original file from the website and not some modified file. Okay, so this has been a whole bunch of information. I just kind of throw a lot of at you, but I really didn't want to cover these things in separate videos because they, as I kind of discussed, for example, UUID, I just basically said one sentence about it. So I really felt like I should just put one video out and explain all of these concepts because they're kind of like little things I never really use that much, but kind of know about them. And if you ever need to understand some of them, they're useful. But again, I've never really directly interacted with those, but I still decided to put them in because I think they paint the picture of the Linux operating system. And for example, also these hash functions, they're used in computer science in general and math. So I think they are important to understand. Okay, so thank you guys for watching. I hope you like this video, and I hope you'll subscribe and spread the word of these awesome tutorials. And that's pretty much it for this tutorial. Talk soon.